So, Levi, what did you think of the patch? We'll start with you giving your thoughts because you actually implemented the hotfix while we're waiting for some people to come in.
I like it. I mean, so obviously I've been here since the beginning. So I was playing on it when TrueFire first threw out the idea of like, we're gonna take out Rush. Hey, we're gonna Rush refresh on hit. Hey, we're gonna lower the angles on a bunch of moves. Hey, we're gonna make the ledge grab boxes smaller. And it was funny because he actually asked me to just play on it and give feedback, but I didn't actually know what was going on. But I was like, hey, something feels different. Hey, a shiny forward tilt. Why do that thing?
Okay.
But I think personally, this is like some of the most fun I've had playing Rush Rev in like since that initial testing, and then into when
the initial testing.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
The initial testing, yeah, because it ended up once we knew what was going on, and once we knew that we could like go off and edge guard people, and like the implications on the gameplay, because it took it takes a bit for the
there's our last
meta to kind of build up around the changes in the game, and to adjust to all the changes and stuff like that. But once that meta actually changed, it ended up being a really fun experience.
So let me get us kicked off here. So appreciate everyone joining. This is going to be a very helpful session, not just for us, but for everyone in the community. This is the kind of thing that we do generally behind closed doors. We have our balance council where we have a committee of council members with some of the top players, and they share some of their feedback about what's going on. Really, it's just kind of everyone's nitpicks and kind of complaints. And so it tends to be a little bit more, I want to say like a shopping list of like, what do you want to get in the patch? And what I wanted to do a little bit differently here was to bring it onto the town hall, to have players who are current, very active players like Yogurt and Vonage join us. I also wanted to have a difference of perspective with some of our less active players, Pochi and Model Zero or Hydration here. And I think what's going to be interesting about the conversation today is that I want to talk more about the game feel as a whole, rather than kind of like, hey, these are some annoying nitpicky things that you have, and talk about like what the patch changed for you, maybe what are some of the things that the patch you wish the patch fixed but you didn't. And we're going to have an array of opinions, as well as the rationale from Levi, TrueFire, Quaid, and myself, and House even. So this is going to be a very interesting panel for everyone listening to hear kind of how we think about honing the game as we move forward, and to hear what's on the community's mind. One last thing I'll say is, we don't want everyone to just sugarcoat the game, talk about only the positive stuff. But if there's going to be anything that you critique, make sure you're talking about the game and the gameplay design. Make sure you're not talking about specific players or people. We want to attack the problems and not one another. So keep it, professional and keep it classy. That said, I'd love to kind of warm us up with a bit of background on what we wanted to accomplish with this patch, TrueFire or Quaid. And from there, we could go down the line and get people's initial reactions to whether or not they think we did a good job of that. TrueFire, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. My mic has been doing a staticky thing, so I'm muting myself when I'm not talking. Rationale for the danger patch as a whole. I feel like we explained it pretty well throughout the patch notes and stuff, and just general communication in the patch preview and stuff like that. But you guys also have to forgive me. I'm pretty tired. I've been up for a while, so my brain is on slow mode right now. So if I stutter and
I'll
stumble,
help you through it.
But I've got my original pitch document in front of me, so I'm rapidly reading through that and trying to formulate an answer. But I guess the gist of it is there are a few reasons why we made the broad changes we made in the patch. There are a few things that we kind of didn't have that we felt we could get by making offstage more dangerous, making recoveries more dangerous. One of them is obviously like interesting edge guarding. Our edge guards in the game before this patch were often very like there was only one kind of edge guard really, and it's do you hit them hard enough to kill them, or do you do a 1-2 combo and kill them off the side kind of thing. Beyond that, there was you're never gimping anyone. You're never gonna go off and do something tricky and kill someone. You're either gonna hit them with a kill move and you're close enough to the edge to kill them, or they're gonna get back. So doing all this danger stuff added a lot of variety to the kinds of edge guards you might see. You might, someone might not have any resources, so you might be able to just go down and tap them with a move that otherwise wouldn't have killed. But now that they have no resources, it's a viable option. That kind of thing. It also makes counter edge guarding more interesting. If someone goes deep to get you and you manage to slip out and then hit them with something, you can potentially turn it around a lot more reliably than before. So just in general, the edge guarding game we think is a lot more diverse, a lot more interesting with these changes.
I think one quick thing.
Yeah,
we also see a bit less of these kinds of DBZ moments where we're like deep off stage and you're just like, what's happening? Like who's hitting who's in disadvantage even? It wasn't even clear when people are going back and forth fighting off stage what was going to happen. I think this also helped with that. Quaid, was there anything that you wanted to add?
I think Fire got it mostly.
All right,
yeah.
So
well, I can say more if you want, but yeah.
I think that's a good spot, but add a little bit.
All right. Well, the other thing, and I think we could, I could keep going for a while, but the main other thing is stage positioning. Something we found previously, and I think we still do find this to a lesser degree, is that people didn't really care much about their stage positioning because it doesn't really matter where you hit someone. You're going to combo them more or less the same, and they're not really threatened all that much by being close to the edge of the stage because most kills happened off the top before, or at least a lot of kills happened off the top. And there wasn't all that scary to be off stage. In fact, a lot of players would just like stand by the ledge and jump backwards off, willingly putting themselves off stage in what should be a dangerous position. And that had a lot of impact on neutral. Because if giving up space is not a scary thing, then like running backwards and dashing away and just waiting for your time to whiff punish is a very viable strategy. So hopefully, and I do think this is the case, but I don't think it's gone as far as I would have liked it to go.
Oh, okay.
Off stage being scary means that people are a little less inclined to just like rush backwards and try to whiff punish. Because every time they do that, they're closer to the edge and closer to that scary position. And I do think this has helped in that respect. But like I said, I think
I want to dial it up.
Yeah, but I don't think we need to dial up the danger. But it would be nice if we could do something additional to make stage positioning more relevant.
So that's very helpful context. Again, just to get us warmed up and kick things off. Why don't we start with Yogurt? What are your thoughts on where the patch is in terms of accomplishing that goal? And what do you think about the goal in general?
So I was definitely like super skeptical of the change at first, like the whole getting rid of rush, because like that's a huge part of the game. I'm pretty sure everyone that's like played the game a lot just instantly died over and over for like the first like few hours just because they thought they had rush but they didn't, and people are probably still doing that just because you're used to like mashing the rush button a lot. So it's definitely something to get used to, and I was like skeptical and like kind of iffy and scared because this is like a completely like it's not like it affects some people, like it's game changing for everybody and like all characters. So I was like scared that it might just like completely like break the game, but it actually it was a little bit smoother than I thought, I guess. Like it made more sense in the end than I thought it would. I'm not 100% sure if I like prefer it yet, but it made more sense than I thought it would. And I think the thing about like being a little more scared to whiff punish, I feel like that's mostly the same. Yeah. Like I mean, yeah, I don't know if the new changes made it so that whiff punishing is like harder. I feel like if that's like your playstyle or that's how you want it to play, then like you'd still do that. And like even though you're a little bit closer to the edge, you still have like a lot of resources to like get back. And yeah, that's how I kind of feel right now.
Got it. How about you, Vonage?
I mean, I was kind of skeptical, just like Yogurt, a little bit at first. Because on paper, a lot of those changes seem kind of drastic, being a one-trick Aang main, the whole like side special lockout and everything like that. Obviously, they have some of the best sort of kind of recovery in the game, and they're easy to kind of edge guard in that regard. But it's actually playing it. In some ways, I sort of agree with like Truefire that while it seemed like a lot on paper, realistically it doesn't come off as like in accomplishing that goal that you were thinking about of like not kind of cheesing the edge a little bit. You still see people playing Erda and kind of accomplishing the same things that they have been doing. Whether or not I feel like that's a good position, it's hard to really say. But like as of right now, I mean, the normalizing of like fall speeds and certain things like that has definitely helped in certain aspects. I know with like Aang specifically, the complaint I always get is the hit stun, and that's constantly been kind of tuned down. But I've found the fall speed and everything kind of being normalized just kind of balance that out a bit, because as with kind of any game, like it kind of sucks to be like waiting for your turn. I get it. So the sooner you can be kind of actionable has been good. And then the changes to some of the air tech I've found have been I've found them to be better so far. Here again, it's hard to say with only like a week or so with a patch and whatnot, but I mean, I've been finding myself feeling more consistent with things. Obviously, like bug fixes, like the buffered in two specials that kind of threw things off. That's been big. So I mean, so far I've enjoyed it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Good to hear. Really quick, because neither of you mentioned it, what did you think about just making offstage play more dangerous in general? Was that something that you were agreed with up front, or was that when you said you were skeptical that that was a good goal to have, or are you skeptical about the implementation?
I guess for me, skeptical of kind of both, whether or not it was like a good direction, because I don't know, in some ways kind of fighting off stage has been part of the enjoyable part, but also, I mean, there's aspects that it can get a little cheesy, and yes, you kind of lose track of certain things and all that kind of stuff. So it's a weird kind of balance.
Okay. How about you, Yogurt? When you're saying you're skeptical, was that about like the shifting to be more offstage dangerous? Was you were skeptical, or were you more skeptical of the implementation of the rush?
I was like skeptical about like how that affects like balance, I guess, like how that affects like because some characters naturally just have much better recovery, and some characters are better at punishing bad recovery. Like I think like Zoo is probably one of the worst recoveries probably. So like sometimes being off stage probably, or some of these changes might affect her more negatively than like Erda maybe. Erda has pretty good recovery. And I was also another reason why I said I was skeptical is like I wasn't sure about like the fun part either. Like I think it's working like better than I initially thought, I guess. But I was scared that like it wouldn't be as like fun because like a lot of the fun is just like kind of like dashing around and like flying in the sky and like all that stuff. And this like makes it a little bit less mobile, but it's like more emphasis on like other parts of the game instead.
Okay. Let's turn things over now to Pochi. What are your thoughts about the patch's high level goals and whether or not you think that the patch is a step in the right direction to accomplish them?
So, like, first things first, like, the patch is definitely like a step in the right direction. Like, if I would put like positives and negatives, I would speak more positively about the patch than negatively, honestly. So I enjoy this patch much. I mean, 2020 is probably the year I played a lot of this game, so I'm basing most of my playtime off of that, when like the game's probably what's most nuts, right, in like every regard. So like before, at least for me, offstage play was like you either got combo to death or there was barely any reversals, much, at least to me, because everyone got the resources back mostly. And I think resource management became much more important in this patch. So I'm down for that. I mean, I come from like other games too, and this patch kind of just fits my style, where I want to like go off and like hit them, and they're like, okay, I know they're not going to be able to do this option, whereas before I had to focus. Okay, crap, they have this option still again. But yeah, I think this patch is in step in the right direction. That's for sure.
And I think just specifically about making offstage play more dangerous, I think that you think that's also a welcome change to the game in general, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bounce off what TrueFire said earlier. I think you can go even farther with some of the stuff like that, like not off stage, but even on stage, right? Because the on stage gameplay right now, specifically at least to me neutral wise, has mainly stayed the same. So like since getting off stages now is just like, oh my god, you can just die like immediately, which I have a couple clips of that. Just like I get red once and I'm done. Like on stage, I think it's still, there's some things that might be a bit too safe still. But I think you can definitely ramp up the danger, I guess, like on the on stage part than it is off stage. Like, I don't know, make some things more punishable in that regard. I don't know, work something out that way.
Got it. All right, Model Zero. What are your thoughts about the steps that we've been taking to make offstage play more dangerous, and whether or not this patch did a good job of accomplishing that?
So for edge guarding, I think it actually did a pretty great job, truthfully. Having that option to have real edge guarding is big in a platform fighter, and it's actually really great to have like meaningful offstage play and having to keep track of those resources instead of just getting everything back. It's a very welcome change from my part. What is that static? I'm sorry, 1 second.
Oh, it might be me.
Now, in terms of what TrueFire said on the neutral side of things, I don't think it quite had the impact that might have been looking for. And in a lot of little ways, having, I don't know, word this, like losing rush is pretty big for something like, I don't know, instant air dash in, because you can just get whiff punished if they don't land and you lose that resource. So right now it might not seem like it's a big thing, but down the line it could be. But at the same time, that more like just sitting back at the corner and like with punishing, like Yogurt said, you still have those resources to immediately work with while you're still on stage, even if you're just running off really quick to get back on. It's it didn't quite do what was expected for neutral, but off stage, it's a very welcome change, and I think it accomplished the goal incredibly well. It's like immediately apparent if people are already started to SD like crazy.
In terms of, I think, hearing this, it sounds like we're doing a really good job of the offstage play, but in terms of the onstage play, there's still more that needs to be desired. Now, I'm curious from TrueFire's take, do you want to elaborate more on like where you think we can dial it up? Do you think it's related to the defense and shield play? Do you think it's where do you think we need to be turning the dials?
Yeah. Well, first, let me real quickly speak to something that Yogurt said about balance. And I want to acknowledge, like, there were definitely some winners and some losers across the cast in terms of, balance in this patch, right? Zhurong loses a lot when edge guards are strong, and, Erda gains a lot, for example. And that is something we were aware of, and it's something we kind of took into account. Like, we opted not to give Zhurong her side special back because we knew she was already considered top tier, and so it's kind of okay if she has a bad recovery. But we're definitely going to have to, keep an eye on that, and we'll almost certainly have to make balance changes to compensate for shifts made with this patch going forward. So balance is kind of something that will take some time watching top players learn the meta and then adapt to it and seeing where things end up falling before we can, say like, okay, this character is too weak, this character is too strong. But it's definitely, you are almost certainly correct in saying like the balance is out of whack. It's just, we don't really know how out of whack or exactly where it's out of whack yet. Levi, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I did. I just want to rehash that just to make sure that meta development takes time, and people forget that every time like a really big change happens. So I'm wondering if this, like the offstage play trickling into onstage, is just kind of something that it's going to take time for the meta to develop around it. So people are saying that Erda is still camping the ledge and doing her stuff, trying to find reversals and stuff like that. But that might just be because that's what Erda does, and that might not be what she does moving forward in the meta as it progresses. So I just wanted to make that just make sure that everybody's still thinking about that. That just because the meta is not progressing immediately doesn't mean that it's gone in the wrong direction or that it's not going to change.
Yeah, like once someone labs out, like once it starts to click for people, for example, if someone air dashes in on me and I get a counter hit on that air dash, now they don't have an air dash and I can do like such and such a confirm, and now they're dead. And once those kinds of confirms start becoming like standardized, I think we might see substantial changes to how people play a neutral, at least at a high level.
Yeah,
or it might be that those confirms don't exist broadly as we think they might.
Yeah, and there's also a thing with just the whole increasing of danger that I think this was kind of an unintended side effect, and something that we're starting to notice is that reversals in general are just extremely strong. Things like Erda command grab and Weishan up special spike, stuff like that, are much stronger in this patch, not only because they send, or mostly just because they send you off stage, right? So going out to edge guard characters that have really good reversals can be a really scary thing, because you can also get reversaled on much harder. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is definitely something to note, and it may be something that's worth tuning in general, like the ability for characters to get these like really crazy reversal things.
Yeah. All right. Now to answer the original question, I don't have a good answer, is the answer. Rush Rev neutral has kind of been cursed since the dawn of time. And how to fix that without compromising a lot of the things that people like about Rush Rev is an ongoing open question. And I think it's just a matter of experimenting over and over and over until we find something that clicks. Because a big part of what people like about Rush Rev, is you can kind of zoom all over the place, and you're not really you're actionable all the time. You can fly all around. You can rush around really fast and then immediately do an attack, and you can do these crazy wavelands and slide offs and stuff all over the place. And that is fun, but that also means you can be very slippery and very hard to catch. And if you're really trying your hardest to lame it out, that can be very frustrating. And I think it's kind of like it's the quintessential problem for Rushdown Revolt, in my opinion. And it's still the one that we haven't fixed. It's honestly the one problem that I'd like to fix more than any other problem. And I do think it's gotten a little better with this patch, and I think we've gotten better and better over time in various ways, but I don't think we've fundamentally addressed this problem, and I don't have any confident I can't confidently say I think we need to do this to fix it. Because the only tried and true guaranteed solutions are ones that would compromise some of the stuff that really makes Rush Rev fun to begin with.
What are maybe one or two of those, right? Probably more.
More
flag.
commitment. Yeah, less, not necessarily with flag, but slower rushes. In a traditional fighter, right? Backdashes don't go very very far typically, and they're often a little slower than dashing forwards, or you can't cancel them immediately. That kind of stuff. So something like that, right? But we tried something like that in Rush Rev. People didn't really like it. It made the game feel more sluggish, etc. There are a lot of other ideas, but for example, having an objective, right? Something like if you play Battle Right, there's a little orb in the middle that respawns every 30 seconds or whatever, and if you break that orb, you get some health and super meter back for your team. And if we did something like that, that would kind of encourage forward pushing behavior, in neutral instead of slippery kind of behavior. But that's also a very tacked on kind of thing, or it could be at the very least if it's not done in an elegant way. But that's another example of the kind of thing that could potentially make neutral better, but doesn't really seem like it makes sense in the context of Rush Rev.
If I can, how would each of you, I guess I kind of want to have TrueFire talk about how would you crystallize what the problem is with neutral right now? How would you describe what the problem is if you could put it in one sentence?
One sentence, that's a tough one. It's rock, paper, scissors, except paper ties with scissors instead of losing the scissors.
And what's paper in this?
In this case, paper is avoiding the opponent and waiting for an opportunity to whiff punish. Right? If they play right, then you tie and there's a stalemate, right? Where they're not whiffing for you to punish and you're never committing to anything. Until eventually they do whiff and you win, right? So you keep playing paper and they keep playing scissors, which is a tie when it should be, their win. Until eventually they get sick of playing scissors and they're like, all right, I'm going to play rock because I want to go in. And then, hey, I played paper, you lose. That's obviously very reductive. It's not so simple, but crystallizing it down in a statistical kind of sense, that's kind of how I feel it is. You can beat someone who's just trying to whiff punish, right? It's not like there's nothing you can do. But it's more of an uphill battle than it is for the person who's dancing around and waiting for whiff punishes.
So with that in hand, let's go back around in reverse order here and talk about maybe what thoughts these great players have on that particular problem. Maybe they even disagree, maybe they do agree, and maybe they have some suggestions for what they think could be done to address it. So let's start with Model Zero this time.
I pretty much agree with TrueFire. The big problem from my perspective at least is that it's not that defensive options are necessarily lacking, especially now with this the state of defensive options and how they've been implemented thus far. Like this is very much past like shield bash and how that was implemented and whatnot. The defensive options on paper should be. Ooh. Yeah, take on the static switch.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's TrueFire. I'm sorry. The defensive options on paper should be quite good, but it feels like you actively need to incur more risk to use them compared to actively, pushing forward in neutral. And it's actively much easier to simply not use the defensive options and to not engage with your opponent because you have less risk-inducing resources to do so than you do to attempt to use a defensive option. And that's largely where I feel the issue is in terms of wanting to engage in neutral. There's not a lot of incentive to push forward and win neutral. And in the same way, there's not a lot of incentive to try and engage yourself in a position where you may have to use those defensive options because there's a little too much risk incurred when you do. It's easier to just sit back and try not to, engage with punish instead.
What do you think makes the most sense to potentially address that?
See, that's a hard question, really, because you don't want to make defensive options too strong either. When you make defensive options too strong, then they begin to warp the meta in an unhealthy way. Me and Pochi come from a game where strong defensive options definitely warp the entire game, even still. So it's a really tricky it's a tricky balance, especially when you have punish that is as strong as it is in Rushdown. I don't want to use like a specific example from a game, but I'm going to use it just because I think it's a good way to contextualize. Not necessarily making defensive options stronger, but incentivizing neutral. Something like, I don't know, like Unist Grid, where actively being in center stage and pressing, more aggressive buttons, being on your opponent's shield actually gives you reward. But it's not like one static reward. It operates on a cycle for those who don't play Unist. Where there's like minor damage buffs or like in some cases changes to moves that actively reward the player who won neutral within a cycle, and then that cycle resets. They keep that buff, and then for the new cycle, whatever player won grid there maintains that. And I think it's a really cool way to make a game, incentivize winning neutral. I guess that would be akin to what TrueFire said about having an objective, maybe, but something to at least incentivize approaching and wanting to win neutral, rather if buffing defensive options seems too harsh. Because I don't want to just say buff defense, I think I've played that a little bit.
If I can, right? There's two ways to simplify. If we're gonna go paper, rock, this is right. An analogy, right? You can buff defense, or buff offense, or you can nerf evasiveness. It effectively is the triangle of the pieces that we're looking at. And I think that a meter-like solution is one that the team has internally talked about a long time, and it's something that I've personally pushed back on. And so I'm curious, in this forum, what do players like Vonage or Yogurt, are you familiar with the system that Model Zero is talking about?
With meter?
I want to chip in real quick and say I've suggested adding grid to Quaid like 6 times now, but every time we've been like, nah, it's too much.
It's so good.
Oh, wait, what's GRD?
GRD it's grid. So to recap, basically it's a meter, but not necessarily one that you spend. It's more one that you earn by in the context of Unist, which is like an anime traditional fighter. You earn it by either dealing damage, dealing block stun, I believe, and actively holding forward in neutral. It's almost like in Guilty Gear, if you dash back too many times, you get negative penalty. But instead, rather than punishing you for dashing back, it rewards you for, pushing forward and engaging in neutral. And similarly, you lose it for being hit on your block, among other things. Like there are many ways to gain and lose grid. Dashing back is one of them, I believe, to lose grid as well. But basically, it's just a way to incentivize aggressive play without necessarily punishing defensive player, non-interactive play as well.
In the context of this game, how would something like grid, again, you're not necessarily a game designer, we're not asking you to come up with a really elegant way of introducing it, but just for the sake of example, in your mind, Model Zero, how would a grid implementation look? And maybe this is something, since Quaid and Truefire are also very familiar with it, they can maybe help you out.
So I mean, the immediate easiest way to at least incur a gain in a grid-like system would be time spent closest to center stage. Whoever is closer in center stage for an extended period of time, they will earn it more frequently.
Ultra hard to balance.
I have a counterpoint.
What's up?
Well, before we do the counterpoint, I just want to make sure everyone understands what it is that we're talking about. So
right, I'm saying that I think that grid in a platform fighter doesn't necessarily mean center stage. It means moving in the direction of your opponent.
So that's also fair. Which I was going to state.
What would the grid do? Right? Like, how would the grid actually help you? Okay, so the meter's getting full, but what does it do? How does it change your gameplay? That now that you have this GRD, you can do something that you couldn't do before.
So in the context of Unist, I hate to use this because it's not a welcome example probably for platform fighter people. But it does buff overall damage for something like Rage, except it's not like in a comeback mechanic sense. And it also does change some properties of how moves work for characters. I can't think of an immediate example for I think something with Hyde's projectile as like a quick example. Instead of it just being like a single hit, it might change to a multi-hit. But you could change move properties based on, how much or whether or not you win that cycle. You could generally buff overall damage. You could do hit stun in the context of a platform fighter, such that some weaker moves might link into other moves and allow you to have, more options in punish. Could affect range for some moves. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but it's just more minor buffs, not necessarily like a whole kit change. Not like an we're not trying to make Joker Arsene,
So if I could come up with like a simple example, right. Let's say, so we have critical state. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that critical state. Excuse me, Truefire, you can correct me if I get this wrong. If you're doing a defensive maneuver, a ledge, get up, a parry, and you mistime it and you get hit, or your opponent proactively hits you during the defensive maneuver when you're not actively countering, you will be put into this negative state where now you have more hits done when you get hit. So what we could do as a simple example is, whoever's moving more towards their opponent more fills up their positive version of critical state, and if they fill the bar, then their next hit will have the effect as if their opponent was in critical state. Like it will impose that on their enemy when you hit them. So you're basically guaranteed a follow up by being more aggressive. Does something like that sound like it would solve the problem? Does a system like that sound interesting, where it's like, okay, hey, I'm green now, I'm glowing, my next hit's going to have extra hits, and I'm more likely to, or my next hit will be like a paralyzer, so I'll be able to get the exact combo I want, and I can use a faster move that doesn't necessarily have combo routes now just to get that hit in. How does that sound like a solution? Does that sound like something that we need? Does that sound interesting?
I think it does. I like this idea from the beginning, or at least some version of it.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of it's honestly probably the next thing I would have pushed for if I thought it was possible to get past the Keiko meter wall would be something like grid as far as the next big gameplay change.
I think we should probably address this enforcing of playstyles, steamroll mechanics talk that's going on in the chat right now.
Oh, it's in general?
Some way. Yeah, in general chat. Because first of all, I don't think that this would really be a steamroll mechanic at all, because it's only really affecting neutral. Like you can play neutral. Actually,
Yeah, let's take a step back. So how a steamroll mechanic is something when someone's ahead, it's harder for someone who's behind to catch up, right? And it's the opposite of a rubber band mechanic. From what I understand about this is that this is basically a incentive to approach, but it's not necessarily the person who's winning does better. It's just the person who plays more aggression. It's kind of a balancing act for rewarding aggression more, and making it so that paper is in its rightful relationship to scissors. So can you please let Jackson speak is the question. Truefire, your mic is static. Now I'm stuck reading chat. I'm going to pull way back the discussion. So basically, my understanding is with punishing, playing evasive, waiting for your opponent to commit to something and then hitting them because, haha, you are the sucker who decided to attack first, therefore you lose. It's something that we're trying to fix. And it's not that it's in a super busted place right now. It just feels imbalanced. And it's something that we've always, from the very, very beginning, the team has wanted this kind of a solution. And I have pushed away from it because I think that the idea of a meter, the idea of you're powering up and you have this other resource you have to manage feels really intimidating to players. But I think if it's done, honestly, kind of as a last resort, but also done in a way that it feels very intuitive, then maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But let's talk about how something like this might not be a steamrolling mechanic. And I'd like to have Quaid or Truefire talk to this. And if they don't want to, we can pass it to Levi. And then we can have the players kind of react to this part of the conversation.
Yeah. I do think there is an element of like, if you hit someone, right, you knock them away, now you do have the advantage in that you are immediately in, you are closer to center stage, right? So it's on them to take center stage from you and it's on you to lose it, right? So in that sense, you do get a bit more advantage for getting a hit, right? When you get into advantage, you have a little bit more advantage, and it's on the person, the person who lost the last neutral to take back the center stage. But I wouldn't call it a steamroll mechanic or a snowballing mechanic any more than like hit stun is a steamroll mechanic, right? Like when you hit someone, they get put in a hit stun, and now you're in advantage, right? Or any more than stage positioning is a steamroll advantage, right? If we're playing melee or something like that, and I, knock you off stage and you get back to the stage, you're still in a disadvantaged position because you're closer to the edge of the stage, which is decidedly disadvantageous in a game like Melee. And I'm closer to center stage. And even though it's not enforced by like a meter or a resource or anything like that, you still really want to take center stage back from me. But you have to like be proactive to take it back. And I all I have to do is, if we both stand here, I'm winning because I maintain the advantage. I guess that kind of covers how I feel about it being a snowball mechanic. So it does increase the advantage you get from like winning a neutral, but it doesn't you know.
Yeah. So let me put it a different way. Just synthesizing what you said. If positioning is a snowball mechanic, then this is a snowball mechanic. But if you think that positioning is like, hey, I'm playing the game a different way, I'm adopting a certain strategy to get a benefit that wouldn't exist by playing around the positioning, then that's basically what it is. It becomes a strategic consideration, but it's not necessarily a snowball mechanic that you automatically get.
I still think that this thing will only work if it's agnostic of stage position, and it just has to do with your the relative distance between
the relative
opponent.
Yeah, no, I at first blush do agree with you too.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So if you're getting I think that if you're getting more advantage for being closer to the stage or center of the stage, then it does turn into a steamroll mechanic, because you get the ability to, or so either A, you're moving towards the opponent and giving up grid because you're moving away from center stage, or you're backdashing to center stage. And
so it's not about being closer to center stage, it's about being closer than your opponent to center stage.
Just being, even so it's still it'll still discourage things like overshooting. I really think that I really think that, like, and the other thing is that people I'm
gonna say I think that's just wrong.
But that said, hold on. Let's
yeah, no,
we can table this. I want to pin it. I just want to pin the nuance of how it's applied, and I just want to get kind of the players' thoughts on it. So we started with model 0 on this system on neutral. I want to actually go a full kind of step back, or a half a step back, to the nature of the question I asked, which was, okay, so offstage is more dangerous. Neutral feels like there's too much reward for being evasive. What are your thoughts on that state of the game and what you think could be changed? And we can keep this in mind, but I do want to go through Pochi, Yogurt, and Vonage because we have them here. So, Pochi?
Yeah, so I'm in full agreement with everyone that has spoken about, how strong whip punishing is in this game for the most part. Considering that every character benefits from whip punishing to an insane degree because of Spark existing as a mechanic, right? So if we're talking about the context without Spark, then it's like, okay, it's different. You're just stuck with whatever frames your move has, but Spark existing is a pretty big deal. I have said in the past whether or not, like, if I'm shielding and I get hit with like a grounded move, should I gain the mechanic of Spark, like, at all? And I've said this before in the past. I'm not sure if people would agree with something like that, but that has always been like an option for me, where it's like, well, if you want to make it less punishing, or like whip punishing wise, because right now if you try to space out and I hit your shield at a certain way, like basically if I do a down tilt as Ashani and I hit the other Ashani but my down tilt space perfectly, I also gain Spark. So then I'm also safer than what I normally when I don't have Spark. So that was always for me something that made sense. It's like, hey, if you remove gaining Spark from aerials, why don't we try out with it grounded? But again, that could be something that's completely not at all accepted, which is fine by me. But that was just something that I was, always for.
Yeah, okay, that's another idea on the table. Yogurt, Vonage, let's start with you, Yogurt.
Wait, for which question?
We're talking about neutral. We're talking about in neutral, the bias towards whip punishing in the game is very strong, and whether or not you think that that's a problem and what you think could be done to alleviate it.
I'm not exactly sure what can be done if you wanted to make it less gravitated towards whip punishing, because I definitely agree that like whiff punishing is like super strong, and like sometimes being like patient, waiting for an approach and then countering the approach and then just like extending that to the fullest can work. But I do think there is like counterplay, and I don't think it's I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just like biased or whatever, or I don't see it or whatever. But I feel like I don't have that problem as much where like I feel like I'm getting like camped extremely hard or whatever. Like I feel like I don't have that problem very much. I don't know like what the solution could be. Like the meter thing was interesting. It sounds like a lot of like work and like a lot of like nuanced stuff that you would have to balance to make it actually make sense. And I'm not sure if it ever could make sense, but maybe it can. But I'm not sure. Because like the thing is like if people have like a play style or a choice, or if they want to play more patient, then that's like kind of what they'll like. People will find a way no matter what kind of thing. Because like even when like backdashes were nerfed, like by making it slower, so that like the same goal of like making whiff punches less good. Like people were still kind of doing the same thing except like slightly worse or in a different way. So I'm not sure if it's something that you could entirely kind of eliminate, even if it's not favorable, or if you put a mechanic in to make it less favorable.
I don't think the goal is to remove it, by the way.
Not to remove it, but like I feel like it's hard. It's something that's like hard to naturally make less favorable, especially in this game where you have double jump and you also have refreshing rush, which is like a lot of like movement option. So people have the option to like jump away but then rush back in. Yeah, my thing is like I actually don't see it as big of a problem, and I'm not sure if you were to want to lean in the other direction by making it like a more aggressive game. I'm not sure how we would do it.
Vonage, what's your take on this?
I mean, there's obviously like a lot of factors that play into it. I know some aspects have been touched. I mean, with like shield and stuff like that being adjusted. I mean, it's still kind of early to say with some of the stuff that's been brought in with this patch, because there hasn't been enough time, because there's still aspects that things can be kind of figured out and stuff like that. But I don't know. Here again, it's, as everybody's kind of said, there's potential systems that could be put into place to encourage certain aspects and non kind of camping out routes, but it's more so just a matter of kind of like, I guess, playing around with what would ultimately like feel good. So it's not something that I can just say I have a solution to.
Is either of you guys, either Yogurt or Vonage, is more regular players here, do you guys have a reaction to dropping Spark on shield for grounded attacks?
I think that would probably just make shield. It might make shield too strong. I'm not sure how that would, like how everything would change if that were to get put in.
Vonage, what do you think?
I'm kind of in agreement with that. It sounds like it would just make shield strong and be somewhat awkward, but maybe that's just because that's what we're used to, so it's hard to really say.
I mean, we do have a mechanic in existence right now of whiff lag, which is kind of, nobody really remembers about whiff lag because usually you're just sparking the hits as you get. But there is a way to make moves have different shield advantage without bringing spark into the equation, and that's by giving them a different whiff lag from hit on shield lag. which might end up being a little bit overcomplicated. But
Yeah, that would just be achieving basically the same thing, right?
yeah,
But
exactly. but slower.
with a new system.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're too far deep into Spark on Shield to consider removing it at this point. And also, there's a lot of interesting gameplay like stuff that comes from it, like the specials getting Spark but no rush. So you have to save your rush if you're in the air and stuff like that. I remain of the opinion that if we try to implement a grid-like mechanic, it's going to have to involve moving towards your opponent rather than moving towards the center of the stage, though.
I mean, for the grid thing, I do want to stipulate it was an example, but also it was more the intention of being closer to center stage and in conjunction with other things, not necessarily just one thing, because in its source material, it is a lot more than just simply moving forward. You know, you're not just dashing at your opponent, you get it from other things. You could also, you know, say we could gain a grid-like, you know, meter from hitting someone's shield even.
Yeah.
Or like rushing forward or like towards your opponent, which might be a little weird because of like angles and what have you, or just in the general vicinity of your opponent, and you would still gain grid for trying to do like cross-ups on someone's shield.
Yeah, I think it would really just be your horizontal grid position.
Yeah, so like it could be that in conjunction with like how close you are to center, but have that not be the big determinant, you know? It's not like a simple binary, do this one singular thing and you will always win cycle. And again, it would have to be like on the cycle. So that way you're constantly, you know, encouraging players to want to continue to engage in neutral, not just like a one-time thing. I know somebody mentioned that grid is on a timer, so I did want to stipulate that was the intention, to have it also be on a timer. Same here. Someone in general, I mean.
So I think we talked about the danger patch doing a good job of bringing stuff off stage and making that more dangerous. We think that there's still some room to improve in neutral game, particularly as it relates to people playing evasively. Before we wrap up, I thought it would be good to just have each of you, each of the players, and maybe even TrueFire and Quaid and Evil, even everybody share one thing that you would also like to be worked on that hasn't been talked about. And we can start with Model Zero.
Putting people on the spot. Surprise question.
Could you say again? You cut out a little bit for me.
Saying if beyond what we talked about, if there's another thing that you think it's important for the game to work on, that you think is problematic on a systemic level, you know, game balance aside, and you know, it's okay if you don't have anything.
I mean, like I think there are some more obvious things that have obvious answers of like, we can't do this because budget, right? Like, and that'd be pretty unfair to be like, you need more of such and such, when, you know, it's a matter of, you know, limitations relative to resource, on the dev side of things, especially like long term. I think everything's been covered, except like I would maybe also agree with encouraging holding Spark to earn defensive like option, or hitting someone on block and being plus, or just making some system where you do need to commit a bit more to applying active shield pressure, or just, and I said it earlier, but I will reiterate, just generally trying to cut some distance on defensive options, having less risk incurred when you go, you know, to use them relative to like just simply not engaging, alongside making engaging, you know, more like worth going for as well, you know. But I think I hit everything for the most part, personally.
Ochi?
Yeah, I think everything I wanted to say was said, and I agree with a lot of the things that were said, especially by everyone here. I appreciate you having the opportunity for us to be on here and say stuff, about it. But another thing that can be changed, nothing really comes to the top of my head besides the ones that have already been said, really. Like I said before, this is definitely a step in the right direction for the game, and just get excited to see what's going to happen after. So, don't really have much input after.
Cool. Thank you. Yogurt?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Like, the question was like, what would I add, right?
Or what would you like to see changed or
see
updated in
changed?
some way? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we have time for this, but like, maybe like more thoughts on because something that I'm not sure about yet still is like the lowering of angles of like a lot of moves. So, like, because the thing is, for me, I feel like a lot of moves just like kind of are very like leveled out, especially depending on how they DI. Like some of the really low angled moves, like if you DI down, then you just like go straight into tech, or if you DI down, you end up like getting shot like in a downward angle. I'm not sure like what people like think about that.
I think that's an important point, and we'll definitely take that into consideration with everything else. It could have, a lot of these systems have unintended consequences. I'm not saying this was intended or not unintended, but
Yeah, we haven't had
that's a good point. Vonage?
I know we have a passionate, tight-knit community and everything like that, and a lot of people focus on this being a platform fighter, focus on meta balance and all that kind of stuff. But my biggest thing is at one point we'd introduced new modes, tag team, and everything like that. Just the more I've kind of thought about it, I think back and think about realistically, had I jumped into this game by myself, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it. But having a peak group of people to like learn with and kind of grow with, it made it easier. But modes like tag team allowed for, once I had been more experienced, to bring on other players who weren't as experienced and give them opportunities to kind of like ease into the game a little bit, understand some like how to use like a special and stuff like that. So I know a big focus has been balance and kind of like mechanics and everything like that. But I'd kind of like to see somewhat of a return of just introducing some kind of like fun modes that balance isn't really the main focus, just to allow players who might be turned off by like the competitive aspect. And just like, because this is actually the only game that I've actually even messed with any sort of like competitive, or I've even joined a tournament for. But there's a lot of people who aren't, and it's easier to kind of stick to like casual aspects. So that's...
You unmuted. Were you gonna add something?
No, yeah, I just wanted to add, because I've been talking about it for a while. Like, I don't know if it's like in the works or like if it's like hard to add or whatever. But I think, because I don't really play or watch Melee, but I've seen like Melee volleyball, and I think volleyball in this game with Spark would be insanely fun. Like casual or competitive, I feel like it would be fun. But yeah, I've talked about that a lot. I think it'd be really fun to like, I think a lot of different game modes would be fun in this game. But like, I don't know. Yeah.
All being listened to. What about from the, oh, go ahead, Tochi.
No, I was gonna vouch for that. Like a volleyball mode would be really sick. Like alt modes like that would be super sick. So I'm for that too.
I'd also vouch, honestly.
There you go.
Could I interject something from Architect? They've been trying to like say a thing, and they gave me like a 1-sentence summary.
Go for it. That's legal. You can do that.
All right, bet. So what they said here, really quick, is grab on tech is the thing that makes the game feel bad to tech overall, and a lot of our defensive mechanics aren't depthful enough to use or counterplay against, which gives the feeling of very strong and very weak at the same time. Shield changes are a very good step in the right direction.
Got it.
My point.
No, we don't have time for any more like counterpoints or back and forth. But if there is one thing that you want to say from Quaid, Evil, and you, True Fire, about like a thing you'd like to focus on for the game, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, well, I think if this town hall has made anything clear, it's that we should add grid to this game. No, but something we haven't talked about, I actually think visual improvements are something, specifically like hit effects, swing effects, that kind of stuff. Something that's long overdue, and it's something we haven't gotten around to because it's a fairly big project. But at some point, eventually, we can go through and add new swing effects, trails, that kind of thing to all the attacks in the game and make them look a lot more readable.
One thing we might do on that note is us talking to an art recruiter about a VFX studio. Like there's a studio that we could hire who's like full, they just provide VFX for different games. And that could be a great way for us to like knock that out and get that worked on. Evil or Quaid?
Am I muted? No, I'm good. I think for me it is mostly just going to be post-patch follow-up stuff, and trying to get the game in a place where people who like the new angles and tech chase and off-stage play are happy, but also people who like the more combo-heavy part don't feel alienated by the changes.
And Levi, to end it off.
Yes, sir. So I saw some people. Yeah, this is just something that I was thinking of today. I saw some people complaining about some like characters stuff messing with 2v2. And I love doubles. So I think that we should probably spend a little bit of time to iron out some of those bugs, so that there are more playable game modes for the players. That's something that that we already have that's kind of fleshed out.
All right. Yeah.
But also tag team would be dope.
There you go. Tag team would be dope. House, do you say something? You unmuted?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I was gonna say, is there anything that we can tease that we're working on before we go?
A couple things. One, we do need to talk about next week's town hall. Next week's town hall, we're going to be talking about primarily the media team and what we're going to be working on from a media perspective, what you'd like to see from a media perspective, what kind of content would you like us to be producing and showing off. How can we empower the community more? We'll be talking about the community tournaments then as well. That will be next Friday at the same time. You can go to the events tab right now in Discord and mark that you're interested, and that way you'll definitely get a reminder when it goes live. We are working on new stages. We're working on Reina. We're still trying to deliver her this summer. What else can we talk about?
That's already quite a bit.
Yeah, there's I think that this town hall, you guys who are here saw some magic. I think we talked about a couple of cool ideas that have been talked about internally, whether it's this meter concept, whether it's volleyball mode, tag team. These are things that, hearing it from you gets us fired up about it, so that was great that you all contributed and participated. And I'm sorry to everybody who raised their hand, with an hour, not a lot of time to cover a lot of important stuff, but we hope to see you all at the next town hall. And see you next Friday, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.